I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, because what I'm about to tell you might save someone you love from making the biggest mistake of their life. 2 weeks before my granddaughter's wedding, I told her something that would change everything. Never tell your mother-in-law about the $200 million. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't. I'd learned the hard way that some people don't love you, they love what they think they can take from you. My name is Marlo Green, and I raised my granddaughter Leora alone from the time she was 5 years old. No husband to lean on, no safety net, just me and a little girl who needed to believe the world was safe even when I knew better. So when my instincts screamed at me that something was wrong with her future mother-in-law, I didn't ignore them. I'd buried enough mistakes to know when silence becomes dangerous. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, 2 weeks before everything fell apart. The bridal shop smelled like lavender and money, the kind of place where they serve champagne in crystal glasses, and the saleswomen glide across marble floors in heels that cost more than my monthly electric bill. Leora stood on a small platform in front of 3 full-length mirrors, turning slowly in a dress that made her look like something out of a fairy tale. White silk cascaded down her shoulders. Tiny pearls caught the light along the bodice. Her dark hair was pulled back so you could see her face, young, hopeful, glowing with the kind of happiness that makes you forget to be careful. I sat on a velvet chair 15 feet away, watching. Just watching. But I wasn't alone. Delphine Morrison sat beside me close enough that I could smell her perfume. Chanel No. 5, the expensive kind that announces itself when you enter a room. She wore cream-colored slacks and a silk blouse with a string of pearls around her neck. Her hair was styled perfectly, not a strand out of place. At 62, she looked like the kind of woman who'd never had to worry about choosing between groceries and medication. "Isn't she just stunning?" Delphine said, her voice warm and honeyed. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Marlo, you've raised such a beautiful girl. Beautiful girl. Like Leora was a prize poodle I'd groomed for competition." I smiled politely. "Thank you." "No, really." Delphine leaned closer, her voice dropping to something that sounded like confidence but felt like interrogation. "You did this all alone, didn't you?" "After her parents passed, I did. That must have been so hard. Financially, I mean." She said it with sympathy, but her eyes were measuring me, taking inventory. Children are expensive, especially when you're on a fixed income. Fixed income. There it was. The assumption that because I wore Target jeans and drove a 10-year-old Honda, I was barely scraping by. "We managed," I said, keeping my voice even. "Well, thank goodness she's marrying Julian." Delphine patted my hand again, this time with the air of someone granting permission. "Now she'll never have to worry about money. Our family takes care of our own." Our family. She'd said it 3 times in the last hour. Our family does this. Our family believes that. Like Leora was already a Morrison, and I was just the old lady who'd kept the seat warm until the real family showed up. The saleswoman brought out a veil, and Delphine stood immediately, crossing to the platform. "Let me help, sweetheart." She arranged the veil over Leora's hair with practiced hands, adjusting the folds, smoothing the fabric. Leora caught my eye in the mirror and smiled, a soft, trusting smile that made my chest tighten. "There," Delphine said, stepping back to admire her work. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "Julian is going to die when he sees you." Leora laughed, but I saw the way her shoulders relaxed when Delphine approved, saw the way she stood a little taller. That's when I knew I had to pay closer attention, because I'd seen this before. The sweetness, the compliments, the way someone slowly wraps themselves around you until you don't notice you can't move anymore. "Marlo, come take a picture with us," Delphine called, gesturing me over. I stood and crossed to the platform. Delphine put one arm around Leora and held her phone out with the other. "Say family." We smiled. The camera clicked. But as we were walking back to our seats, Delphine said something that made my blood run cold. You know, Leora mentioned you've been helping her with some financial things. That's so sweet. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Have you two already set up accounts for her? I know some young people like to keep things separate at first, but honestly, I've always believed marriage means sharing everything. No secrets. No secrets. I felt my jaw tighten. That's between Leora and Julian. Of course, Delphine laughed lightly. I just meant, well, you know how I am. I like things organized. It's just easier when everyone's on the same page from the start. Financially speaking. Organized. The word landed in my stomach like a stone. Leora was still on the platform admiring herself in the mirror, completely oblivious to the conversation happening 15 feet away. Have you opened any joint accounts yet? Delphine asked. Or talked about combining assets? The question was too specific, too probing. They'll figure it out, I said, keeping my voice pleasant but firm. Delphine tilted her head, studying me. I suppose, though I do think it's important for families to be transparent, especially about bigger things, inheritances, family trusts, that sort of thing. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Not that I'm assuming anything, of course. I just think it's better to have everything out in the open before the wedding. Don't you? And there it was, the real question underneath all the sweetness. She was fishing, trying to figure out if Leora had anything worth knowing about. I looked at Delphine Morrison, her perfect hair, her designer clothes, her smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell her a damn thing. I'm sure they'll work it out, I said, standing up. I need some water. Excuse me. I walked toward the refreshment table at the back of the store, my hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, from recognition. I'd met women like Delphine before, and I knew exactly what they were capable of. 3 days later, I found myself at the Starbucks on Pine Street waiting for my order. I usually made coffee at home. $5 for a latte was a luxury I didn't often indulge in, but I'd had a morning appointment nearby and decided to treat myself. I was standing by the pickup counter when I heard the laugh. Delphine's laugh. Bright and practiced, the kind that carries across a room. I turned and saw her at a corner table with 3 other women, all of them dressed in the uniform of Seattle's affluent neighborhoods, expensive athleisure designer handbags, tasteful jewelry. They hadn't seen me yet. I was just another older woman in jeans and a cardigan, invisible, in the way that women over 60 become invisible in spaces designed for younger, richer people. I picked up my latte and moved to a small table near the window, close enough to hear, far enough away not to be noticed. Absolutely charming, Delphine was saying. Leora's just darling, so sweet and respectful. Nothing like some of these entitled girls nowadays. Where's her family from? One of the women asked. Well, that's the thing. Delphine lowered her voice, and the other women leaned in. She was raised by her grandmother. The parents died in a car accident when she was little. Tragic, really. The women made sympathetic noises. The grandmother did her best, of course, Delphine continued, but you can tell they struggled. I mean, Leora works as a dental hygienist. She's never traveled internationally. She didn't go to private school. She said all of this with a tone of gentle pity that made my hands tighten around my coffee cup. So she's not bringing much to the marriage? Another woman asked. Delphine smiled, a small, knowing smile. That's what I'm trying to find out. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The first woman asked. Well, Delphine said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, the grandmother is very protective, very secretive about their finances, which makes me wonder if there's something there. Like what? I don't know yet. But people who have nothing don't act secretive. They're open about it, even apologetic. But this woman... Delphine shook her head. She deflects, changes the subject. That tells me she's hiding something. Maybe she's just private, one of the women suggested. Maybe. Delphine sipped her coffee. Or maybe there's a nest egg somewhere, an inheritance, a trust fund. You'd be surprised how many working-class families have hidden assets, property, mineral rights, life insurance payouts. Would it even matter? Another woman asked. I mean, Julian doesn't need her money. Delphine set her cup down carefully. It's not about need, it's about control. These young girls don't know how to handle family assets. That's why mothers-in-law exist, to make sure things are protected, managed properly. The other women laughed, but there was something calculating in Delphine's eyes that made my skin crawl. I've seen it before, she continued. Young women come into marriages with family money and they make terrible decisions, overspend, trust the wrong people. It's better if someone experienced helps guide those conversations early. So what's your plan? One of the women asked. Delphine smiled. I'm being patient, getting close, building trust. And after the wedding, when she's officially family, we'll have a little financial planning conversation, just to make sure everything's organized properly. Organized. That word again. I sat there, my coffee growing cold in my hands, and felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. The same cold dread I'd felt the day I'd almost lost everything. Let me tell you about Victoria Ashford. 15 years ago, my husband Marcus died suddenly of a heart attack. He was only 58. One minute he was mowing the lawn, the next, he was gone. I was 53 years old, grief-stricken, and suddenly responsible for handling an estate I barely understood. Marcus had always managed our finances. I'd trusted him completely, which meant I was vulnerable. And Victoria knew it. She was a friend, or so I thought. We served on the church hospitality committee together. She always dressed beautifully, spoke kindly, and seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. 2 weeks after Marcus's funeral, she showed up at my door with a casserole and a folder full of papers. Marlo, honey, she'd said, setting the casserole on my kitchen counter, I've been worried sick about you. Have you thought about what you're going to do about the house, the finances, all of it? I hadn't. I'd been too busy crying and taking care of 10-year-old Leora, who just moved in after her parents died. I brought someone who can help, Victoria said, and gestured toward the man standing behind her. This is Raymond Cross. He's an estate planner. He works with widows all the time. Raymond smiled kindly. He had gray hair and a gentle voice. He looked like someone's grandfather. Mrs. Green, he said, shaking my hand, I'm so sorry for your loss. Victoria thought I might be able to help you navigate some of the financial complexities you're facing. I was grateful, relieved even. I invited them in. For the next hour, Raymond explained in terms that sounded simple and reasonable that I should sign papers giving him temporary management authority over Marcus's estate, just until things were settled, just to make sure everything was handled properly. It's standard procedure, Victoria assured me, squeezing my hand, especially when there are minor children involved. You don't want to make any mistakes. The papers were thick, legal, full of words I didn't understand. You don't even need to read every page, Raymond said gently. It's just formalities. We'll walk you through it. So I signed. I initialed. I dated. I did it because I was scared, because I was alone, because I wanted someone to tell me everything would be okay. It took 3 months before I realized something was wrong. Bills I'd always paid were suddenly being handled. Money that should have been in our joint account was being transferred to something called a managed estate fund. And when I asked questions, Raymond's answers became vague, complicated. Trust me, Mrs. Green, this is all standard. But it wasn't standard, and by the time I found a lawyer who would actually explain what I'd signed, I'd almost lost 40% of Marcus's estate to management fees and administrative costs. The lawyer's name was Marion Ellis. She was 60 years old, sharp as a tack, and angrier than I'd ever seen another human being when she read the papers I'd signed. This is predatory, she'd said, her voice shaking. They targeted you because you were vulnerable. It took 2 years and nearly all my remaining savings in legal fees, but Marion got most of it back. Not all Raymond and Victoria had taken enough that it was legal, just barely, but enough that Leora and I didn't lose the house. Victoria stopped speaking to me after that, stopped coming to church, moved to Arizona. But before she left, Marion did some digging. She's done this before. Marion had told me, showing me papers she'd pulled from public records. 3 other widows in the Seattle area over the last decade. Same pattern. Befriend them, gain trust, get them to sign papers they don't understand. Why? I'd asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because people like Victoria see vulnerability as opportunity, Marion had said, and they're very, very good at hiding it behind kindness. Now, sitting in that Starbucks listening to Delphine Morrison talk about organizing my granddaughter's finances, I felt the same cold recognition. Delphine wasn't Victoria, but she was the same type of predator. And I'd be damned if I let her do to Leora what Victoria had tried to do to me. I picked up my phone and opened Google. I typed Delphine Morrison, Seattle. The first result was a LinkedIn profile. Former estate planning consultant. Worked for a firm called Heritage Financial Management from 2005 to 2015. I clicked deeper, found an old blog post from 2010. Helping families protect their assets, a guide for mothers-in-law. Found a mention in a society page from 2012. Delphine Morrison photographed at a charity gala with My Blood Went Cold. Victoria Ashford. They were standing together in the photo, both of them smiling, holding champagne glasses. The caption read, Heritage Financial Management hosts annual appreciation dinner for top consultants. They'd worked together. Delphine Morrison and Victoria Ashford had been colleagues. I set my phone down, my hands shaking. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't my paranoia. Delphine knew exactly what she was doing. Because she'd learned from someone who'd done it before. And if I didn't stop her, she was going to do it to Leora. The rehearsal dinner was held at Daniel's Reserve, an upscale restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. White tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table, a private room with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Seattle skyline like a painting. I arrived early with Leora. She was nervous, smoothing her dress every few minutes, checking her phone. Grandma, do I look okay? You look beautiful, baby. Julian's family is so... She trailed off, searching for the right word. Fancy, I supplied. She laughed. Yeah, I just don't want to embarrass him. I took her hand. Listen to me. You could never embarrass anyone. You're smart, kind, and you worked your way through college while working full-time. That's more impressive than anything money can buy. She squeezed my fingers. Thanks, Grandma. The Morrisons arrived 10 minutes later. Harold Morrison came first, a tall, thin man with silver hair and the kind of face that looked like it had never questioned an opinion in its life. He shook my hand firmly, but barely made eye contact. Evan, Julian's older brother, followed behind. He was 35, dressed in an expensive suit, scrolling on his phone, even as he walked into the room. He nodded in our direction, but didn't introduce himself. Then came Julian. He was handsome, I'll give him that. Dark hair, warm eyes, a smile that probably made Leora's heart skip when they first met. He walked straight to her and kissed her forehead. You look amazing, he said softly. Leora beamed. And finally, Delphine swept in wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, her husband Harold trailing behind like a faithful shadow. Leora! She pulled my granddaughter into a hug that lasted just a second too long. Oh, sweetheart, you're glowing. Isn't she glowing, Harold? Absolutely. Harold agreed. Delphine turned to me next. Marlo, how lovely to see you again. She kissed my cheek, and I smelled that perfume again. Chanel number 5, expensive and cloying. We took our seats at a long table. I ended up at one end next to an empty chair. Leora and Julian sat in the middle surrounded by Morrisons. The meal began with toasts. Harold stood first, raising his glass. To Julian and Leora, he said, his voice formal and rehearsed, may your marriage be as strong as your commitment to family. Everyone clinked glasses. Then Delphine stood. She smiled warmly at the table, but her eyes lingered on Leora. I just want to say how thrilled we are to welcome Leora into our family. She's sweet, respectful, and we can already tell she's going to be a wonderful wife to our Julian. Wife to our Julian. Not partner, not equal. Wife. In our family, Delphine continued, we believe in certain values, organization, structure, taking care of each other. She looked directly at me for a brief second, then back to Leora. And we believe in being open with each other. No secrets, no surprises. Because that's how strong families stay strong. More clinking of glasses. I didn't drink. As the evening went on, I watched, and what I saw confirmed everything. I watched Julian ask his mother's opinion before answering simple questions. Should we do a first dance song, Mom? Not what do you think, Leora? I watched Evan make a dismissive comment about Julian's career choice, and Julian just laugh it off instead of defending himself. I watched Harold nod at everything Delphine said, never offering his own opinion, never disagreeing, and I watched Delphine. The way she touched Leora's arm when she spoke, the way she leaned in during conversations intimate and controlling at the same time. After dessert, while everyone was mingling, Delphine pulled Leora aside. I was standing near the window pretending to admire the view, but I could hear every word. Sweetheart, Delphine said, her voice low and warm. I wanted to talk to you about something. After the wedding, maybe a week or so after you're back from your honeymoon, I'd love for us to sit down, just the family, to talk about logistics. Logistics, Leora asked. Well, you know, financial planning, making sure you and Julian are set up properly, joint accounts, beneficiaries, that sort of thing. It's boring, I know, but it's important, she smiled. I've helped all our family members get organized. It makes everything so much easier. Oh, Leora said, hesitating. I mean, I guess we can. Perfect. Delphine squeezed her arm. Don't worry about a thing. I'll arrange everything. We'll make it quick and painless, I promise. That's when I stepped forward. Leora, honey, I said, walking over casually. Could you help me with something in the restroom? Leora looked confused but nodded. Of course, Grandma. We excused ourselves and walked down the hallway toward the bathrooms. Once we were alone, I stopped and turned to face her. Baby, I need to ask you something. What's wrong? Has Delphine been asking about money, about our family finances? Leora's eyes widened slightly. How did you? Because I know women like her. Grandma, she's just trying to help. She wants to make sure Julian and I start off on the right foot, financially. And you think that's normal, to have a financial planning meeting with your in-laws right after your honeymoon? Leora bit her lip. All her other sons did it, and their wives. She said it's just how they do things in their family. But Leora, I took her hands. Listen to me very carefully. Do not under any circumstances tell Delphine Morrison about your inheritance. Her face went pale. What inheritance? And that's when I realized she didn't know. We didn't go back to the rehearsal dinner. I texted Julian that Leora wasn't feeling well, and we drove back to my house in silence. Leora sat in the passenger seat staring out the window, her hands folded in her lap. When we got inside, she turned to me immediately. Grandma, what inheritance? I'd known this conversation would come eventually. I just hoped it would be later, after the wedding, after she'd had time to build a life with Julian, independent of his mother's influence. But Delphine had moved faster than I expected. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the couch. Leora sat, her eyes wide and frightened. You're scaring me. Good. You should be a little scared. I sat beside her and took her hand. Baby, do you remember when you were little and you asked me why we never went on fancy vacations? Why I always bought your clothes at Target instead of the mall? She nodded slowly. You said it was because we were saving money. That was part of it. But the bigger reason was that I didn't want you growing up thinking money was something to show off. I wanted you to learn the value of things, to be humble, to fly under the radar. Fly under the radar from what? I took a breath. From people who count other people's money. Leora just stared at me. Your great-grandfather, my father, owned land in eastern Washington, I began. About 200 acres near Spokane. It looked like nothing. Dry, scrubby land that nobody wanted. But in the 1980s, a mining company discovered something. Discovered what? Mineral deposits, rare earth minerals, the kind used in electronics, batteries, aerospace technology, worth millions. Leora's breath caught. My father was smart. Instead of selling the land, he leased the mineral rights. That means companies pay him and now me royalties for everything they extract. It's been 35 years. The royalties compound. Accumulate. I paused. By the time you turn 25, the trust fund I set up for you will be worth approximately $200 million. The color drained from Leora's face. 200. Grandma, that can't be. It's real. And it's yours. But only if you protect it. She stood up, pacing, her hands shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to live a normal life. To work. To understand what it means to earn something. To not be targeted by people who... Like Delphine, Leora whispered. Yes. She stopped pacing and looked at me, tears in her eyes. Julian doesn't know. No one knows except you, me, and the lawyer who manages the trust. And that's how it needs to stay, at least for now. But he's going to be my husband. I can't keep this from him. You're not keeping it from him forever. Just until... Until what? Her voice rose. Until I test him, see if he loves me without the money. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, baby. But this money is your safety net, your power. And once people know about it, that changes everything. Leora sank back onto the couch, her face in her hands. I don't know what to do. I moved beside her and pulled her close. You don't have to decide tonight, but I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you won't tell Delphine. Not yet. Not until we've had time to think this through properly. She was quiet for a long time, then softly. She already asked about family assets. At the bridal shop. She wanted to know if you'd set up accounts for me. My jaw tightened. What did you say? I said we'd managed fine. Leora lifted her head, her eyes red. But she didn't believe me. I could tell. She kept asking questions about your house, your job, where I went to college, like she was trying to add it all up. She was. So what do I do if she brings it up again after the wedding? I cupped her face in my hands. You say nothing. You smile. You deflect. And if she pushes too hard, you call me immediately. Leora's voice broke. What if Julian gets mad? What if he thinks I don't trust him? Then he needs to earn that trust. Real love doesn't require immediate transparency about everything. Real love respects boundaries. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear. And I knew no matter what I said, she was going to have to learn this lesson the hard way. The day of the wedding was perfect. Cloudless blue sky, mild temperature, the kind of Pacific Northwest autumn day that makes you remember why people moved to Seattle. The venue was a historic mansion in Queen Anne with manicured gardens and a view of the Sound. White chairs lined the lawn, flowers cascaded from every available surface. A string quartet played Pachelbel as guests arrived. I stood near the back watching it all come together. Leora was inside getting ready. I'd seen her an hour earlier, nervous, excited, beautiful in that dress we'd picked together. Grandma, is this really happening? She'd whispered. It is, baby. Am I doing the right thing? I'd hesitated, because the truth was I didn't know. Julian seemed like a good young man, but he was still his mother's son, and Delphine Morrison had her claws deep in this family. Do you love him? I'd asked instead. Yes. Then trust that. Trust yourself. She'd hugged me tight, and I'd held on longer than I should have because I knew that everything was about to change. Now as the ceremony began and Leora walked down the aisle on my arm, because I was the only parent she had left, I felt that familiar dread settle in my chest. Julian waited at the altar, smiling. Behind him stood Evan, his best man, looking bored. And in the front row, Delphine Morrison sat with perfect posture, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. But when Leora and I passed, Delphine's eyes locked on mine, and she smiled, not a warm smile, not a welcoming smile, a knowing smile, like she'd already won. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were sweet. When Julian kissed Leora, everyone applauded, and for a moment, I let myself believe maybe everything would be okay. The reception flowed into evening, dinner, dancing, toasts that went on too long. I stayed at my assigned table near the back, watching Leora laugh with her new husband, watching Delphine work the room like a politician, greeting guests, accepting congratulations. And then during the cake cutting, I saw it. Delphine set her designer handbag on a nearby table while she helped arrange Leora and Julian for photos. The bag tipped slightly, and the top gaped open. Inside, I saw the edge of a folder, thick, professional. The kind lawyers use. My heart started pounding. I stood casually and walked closer, pretending to admire the cake. When no one was looking, I tilted my head just enough to see the tab on the folder. It read, Post-Marital Financial Planning, L. Morrison. L. Morrison. Leora's married name. Delphine had already prepared documents, already planned her next move. She was going to strike fast. I pulled out my phone and texted Leora, "Don't sign anything without calling me first, no matter what." Across the room, I saw her phone light up. She glanced at it, frowned, then looked around until she found me. I nodded once. She understood. The newlyweds spent their wedding night at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Delphine's gift, naturally. I went home alone and didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m., staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring. It didn't. At 8 a.m., Leora called. "Grandma?" Her voice was small, scared. "What happened?" "Julian got a call from his mom this morning. She wants us to come by the house this afternoon. She said..." Leora's breath hitched. "She said she has a surprise for us, something to help us start off right." My stomach dropped. Did she say what it was? No, but Julian seemed excited. He said his mom always does this for newlyweds in the family, that it's tradition. "Leora, listen to me. I have to go, Grandma. Julian's waiting. We're supposed to leave for brunch in 10 minutes. Baby, please, don't go to that house without me. I can't avoid his family on the first day of my marriage. They'll think I'm rude. I don't care what they think." There was a pause, then softly, "I'll call you afterward. I promise." The line went dead. I sat there, my phone still pressed to my ear, and felt the same helpless terror I'd felt 15 years ago when Victoria Ashford had walked into my kitchen with a folder and a smile. History was repeating itself, and this time I wasn't there to stop it. I didn't wait for Leora to call me back. At noon, I got in my Honda and drove to the Morrison house in Laurelhurst, one of Seattle's wealthiest neighborhoods, where houses start at $3 million and go up from there. The Morrison home was a French colonial revival with manicured hedges, a circular driveway, and windows that probably cost more than most people's cars. I parked on the street half a block away and watched. At 12:47, Julian's BMW pulled into the driveway. I saw Leora in the passenger seat, still wearing her hair in the loose waves from yesterday. She looked tired. Happy, but tired. They got out and walked to the front door, hand in hand. Before they could knock, the door swung open. Delphine stood there in white slacks and a cashmere sweater, arms outstretched. She pulled Leora into a hug that looked warm, but felt possessive, I could tell even from 50 feet away. They disappeared inside. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, debating whether to go to the door. And then I saw another car pull up, a silver Mercedes. A man in his 50s got out carrying a leather briefcase. He looked professional, polished, the kind of man who charges $500 an hour. My phone buzzed, a text from Leora. "Grandma, there are other people here, other couples. Delphine says this is normal. She does this for all the family." My blood ran cold because I knew exactly what Delphine was doing. She wasn't just targeting Leora, she was normalizing the behavior, making it seem like this was just what families do. I texted back, "What people, who else is there?" 3 dots appeared. Then Evan and his wife Sarah, another couple friends of the family who got married last year, and some kind of financial advisor. financial advisor. I was out of my car and walking toward that house before I'd consciously decided to move. I rang the doorbell. Harold answered. He looked surprised to see me, and not particularly pleased. Marlo, we weren't expecting you. I know, but I need to speak with my granddaughter. His jaw tightened. She's in the middle of... I don't care what she's in the middle of. I need to see her. Now. For a moment, I thought he was going to close the door in my face, but then Delphine appeared behind him, her smile firmly in place. Marlo, what a surprise. She put a hand on Harold's arm. It's fine, honey. Let her in. Harold stepped aside reluctantly. I walked into a foyer that could have held my entire living room. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, flowers in a vase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. We're just in the living room, Delphine said, her voice dripping with false warmth. Having a little family gathering. You're welcome to join us. I followed her down a hallway into a massive living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington. And there they were. Leora and Julian sat on a cream-colored sofa looking confused. Next to them were Evan and a young woman who must have been his wife, pretty blonde, wearing a strained smile that didn't reach her eyes. Across from them sat another couple in their early 30s, both dressed like they'd come from a country club. And standing near the fireplace was the man from the Mercedes. He was setting up a small presentation on an easel. Everyone, Delphine announced brightly, this is Marlo Green, Leora's grandmother. Marlo, you remember Evan. This is his wife, Sarah. And this is Brandon and Michelle Hartley. They've been family friends for years. Brandon and Michelle smiled politely. Sarah didn't smile at all. She just looked at me with eyes that seemed to be silently screaming for help. And this, Delphine continued gesturing to the man by the fireplace, is Marcus Webb. He's a wealth management specialist who works with our family. Marcus Webb extended his hand. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Green. I didn't take it. What's going on here? Delphine laughed lightly. Oh, don't look so suspicious. This is just something we do for all our newly married couples. A little orientation on how we handle finances in our family. It's boring, really, but necessary. Leora, I said, ignoring Delphine, can I speak with you privately? Leora started to stand, but Julian put a hand on her arm. Mom's just trying to help us, Mrs. Green. This is normal. Evan and Sarah went through it. Brandon and Michelle did too. I looked at Evan. He avoided my eyes. I looked at Sarah. She was staring at her hands, folded so tightly in her lap, her knuckles were white. I looked at Brandon and Michelle. They smiled blandly, like actors who'd been told what to say. This wasn't a financial planning meeting. This was a performance, a setup designed to make Leora believe that signing away her autonomy was normal, expected, what good families do. Leora, I said again, please. Grandma, just sit down. Leora's voice was gentle but firm. Let's hear what they have to say. If it's as simple as Julian says, then there's no harm in listening, right? I wanted to grab her by the arm and drag her out of that house, but I couldn't. Not without looking like the crazy, paranoid old woman that Delphine clearly wanted everyone to think I was. So I sat down in a chair near the door, my purse clutched in my lap, my heart pounding. Marcus Webb smiled professionally. Well, now that we're all here, let's begin. Marcus Webb had clearly given this presentation before. He clicked a remote and a slide appeared on the easel. Protecting your family's future, it read in elegant script. Marriage is a beautiful thing. Marcus began, his voice smooth and practiced. But it's also a legal and financial partnership, and like any partnership, it works best when everyone is on the same page. He clicked to the next slide. It showed a diagram of two circles labeled husband and wife merging into one. In modern marriages, many couples choose to keep finances separate, but in our experience, that creates distance, secrets, misunderstandings. He smiled warmly at Leora and Julian. The strongest marriages are built on transparency. Leora nodded slowly. Julian squeezed her hand. I felt sick. Next slide. Common financial challenges for newlyweds. Marcus went through a list: student loans, credit card debt, buying a home, starting a family. These challenges are easier to navigate when you have experienced guidance. That's where family comes in. He gestured to Delphine, who smiled modestly. The Morrison family has a tradition, Marcus continued. When a child gets married, we help them create a comprehensive financial plan. Not to control, to protect. To make sure they're set up for success from day one. Another slide. The Morrison Family Financial Framework. It showed a flowchart of accounts, trusts, investments, all interconnected, all managed through something called Morrison Family Wealth Management. Every couple in the family participates, Marcus said. It allows us to pool resources for better investment opportunities, coordinate estate planning, and make sure everyone is protected in case of unforeseen circumstances. He let that hang in the air. Unforeseen circumstances, like death, divorce, disability, fear tactics disguised as planning. Now, Marcus said, clicking to a new slide, I'm going to walk you through what we recommend for Julian and Leora. The slide showed a list of documents. 1. Joint account agreement. 2. Beneficiary designation forms. 3. Marital asset disclosure statement. 4. Family trust participation agreement. These are standard documents, Marcus assured them. Nothing scary, just paperwork to make sure everything is organized. Organized. That word made my teeth clench. I watched Leora. She was listening intently, her brow furrowed slightly. I watched Sarah. She was staring at the floor, her jaw tight. I watched Michelle Hartley. She was nodding along, but there was something performative about it. Rehearsed. Let me start with the marital asset disclosure statement, Marcus said, pulling out a thick packet of papers from his briefcase. This is simply a document where both spouses list all assets they're bringing into the marriage. Bank accounts, investments, inheritances, trust funds, property, anything of significant value. Leora's head snapped toward me. Our eyes met. The purpose, Marcus continued, is transparency, so there are no surprises down the road. Many couples find it liberating, actually. No more wondering if your spouse is hiding something. Hiding something. The implication was clear. If you don't disclose, you're dishonest. Once we have full disclosure, Marcus said, we can set up the family trust participation. This allows the family to manage assets collectively for maximum tax efficiency and growth. Wait, Leora said, her voice small. Manage assets. What does that mean exactly? Marcus smiled patiently. It means the family's financial team, which I'm part of, helps make decisions about major financial matters. Investments, large purchases, estate planning. You'd still have access to everything, of course. It's just guided. Guided. Another pretty word for controlled. Can I see those documents? I asked, my voice cutting through the room like a knife. Marcus hesitated. These are for Julian and Leora. My granddaughter is about to sign something. I'd like to read it first. Delphine's smile tightened. Marlo, that's really not necessary. Marcus is a professional. We've been working with him for years. Then there's no harm in letting me read it. The room went silent. Finally, Marcus handed me the packet. Of course. Take your time. I flipped through the pages quickly, my eyes scanning for the clauses I knew would be there, and I found them. Page 7. Beneficiary agrees to full disclosure of all trusts, inheritances, and assets acquired before or during marriage to spouses' immediate family members serving as co-trustees. Page 12. Beneficiary grants Morrison Family Wealth Management Advisory Authority over financial decisions exceeding $25,000. Page 19. Beneficiary acknowledges that failure to disclose assets may result in forfeiture of family trust benefits and potential legal action for fraud. It was worse than I'd thought. If Leora signed this, she wouldn't just be disclosing her inheritance. She'd be giving Delphine legal authority to manage it. And if she tried to resist later, they could sue her for fraud. It was a trap. A beautiful, legal, airtight trap. This is predatory, I said, my voice shaking. The room erupted. Excuse me, Delphine's voice was ice. This document, I said, holding it up, is designed to give you control over my granddaughter's assets. Not to protect her, to control her. Marcus stepped forward, his professional mask still in place. Mrs. Green, I understand this might seem complicated, but I assure you, these are standard estate planning. I've read estate planning documents before. This is not standard. Delphine stood up, her composure cracking. Marlowe, you're being incredibly rude. We invited you into our home. I didn't ask to be here, but I'm glad I am because now Leora can see what you're really trying to do. Grandma, stop. Leora said, her face red. You're embarrassing me. I don't care if I'm embarrassing you. I care if you're about to sign away your future. Julian stood up. Mrs. Green, my mother is trying to help us. This is how our family operates. If you can't respect that, your mother, I said, turning to face him, has done this before, to other daughters-in-law, to other vulnerable women, and I'm not going to let her do it to Leora. That's enough, Harold's voice boomed. I'd never heard him raise his voice before. You come into our home and accuse my wife of fraud, I finished. That's what this is. Elegant fraud. Delphine's face went white with rage. Get out! Get out of my house right now! I'm not leaving without Leora. Grandma, please. Leora stood up, tears in her eyes. Just go. I'll call you later. Leora, go. The word hit me like a slap. I looked around the room, at Delphine's furious face, at Harold's stone-cold expression, at Evan, who wouldn't meet my eyes, at Sarah, who was crying silently, at Marcus, who was packing up his presentation like this was just another day at work, and at Leora, my granddaughter, looking at me like I was the villain in this story. I picked up my purse and walked to the door, but before I left, I turned back one more time. Sarah, I said, looking directly at Evan's wife, how much did you have before you married into this family? Her eyes widened. Because I'm betting you had something. An inheritance, maybe from your parents, maybe from your grandparents. And I'm betting that when you married, Evan, Delphine helped you organize it. Don't answer that, Delphine snapped. But Sarah was already crying harder, her shoulders shaking. How much do you have left? I asked softly. How much control do you have over your own money now? Get out! Delphine screamed. I looked at Leora one more time. When you're ready to hear the truth, you know where to find me. Then I walked out of that house and didn't look back. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I had to pull over twice to collect myself. When I got back to my house, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. I went inside and called Marion Ellis, the lawyer who'd saved me 15 years ago. Marion, I need help. I told her everything, about Delphine, about the documents, about Leora. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Marion spoke. Marlowe, you did the right thing walking out, but I need you to understand something. Leora is an adult, and she's married now. If she chooses to sign those documents, there's nothing you can legally do to stop her. There has to be something. The trust you set up is ironclad. They can't touch it without Leora's explicit consent. But if Leora gives that consent... She trailed off. Did you tell her about the protection clauses? What protection clauses? The ones I added when we restructured the trust 5 years ago, after you told me about Leora getting engaged. My heart stopped. Marion, what are you talking about? You don't remember we restructured the trust to activate a new set of terms the moment Leora got married, specifically to protect against exactly this kind of situation. What terms? I heard paper shuffling. Give me a second. Okay, here it is. Upon marriage, the original Green Family Trust dissolves and reforms as the Leora Morrison Irrevocable Trust. The new trust has explicit protection clauses that prohibit spousal family members from having any advisory or management authority, and there's a coercion clause. A what? A coercion clause. If anyone attempts to pressure, manipulate, or coerce Leora into assigning, transferring, or granting authority over trust assets within the first year of a marriage, all potential claims by in-laws are automatically and permanently forfeited. I sat down hard on my couch. So if Delphine keeps pushing, she loses any legal right to ever touch that money. Forever. Even if Leora wanted to give her access later, she couldn't. The trust would prohibit it. Does Leora know this? She should. I sent her a letter explaining the new terms when she turned 23. Did she never mention it? I thought back. 2 years ago, Leora had gotten a thick envelope in the mail. I'd asked her what it was, and she'd said, "Just some trust stuff from your lawyer. Looks boring." She'd never read it. "Marion," I said slowly, "what happens if Leora discloses the trust to the Morrisons but doesn't sign anything? Then they know about it, but they can't touch it. The trust is structured so that only Leora has access. No spouse, no in-laws, no one. And if she does sign something, depends on what she signs. If it's a document granting them management authority, the coercion clause might not apply because she did it voluntarily. But if we can prove she was pressured, manipulated, or didn't understand what she was signing," Marion paused, "we'd have a case, a strong one. So what do? You wait, you document everything, and you pray that Leora is smart enough to see what's happening before it's too late." At 11:47 that night, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I thought maybe Leora had come to her senses. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Leora standing there. It was Sarah, Evan's wife. She was still wearing the clothes from earlier, but she looked disheveled, like she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared and her hands were shaking. "Mrs. Green," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry to come so late. I didn't know where else to go." "Come in," I said, immediately stepping aside. She walked in and stood in my entryway, looking lost. "I shouldn't be here. If Evan finds out, he'll—" She stopped herself. "He'll what?" She wrapped her arms around herself. "Can we sit down?" I led her to my living room and made her tea she didn't drink. She sat on my couch staring at her hands, and I waited. Finally she spoke. "Everything you said today about Delphine, about the money." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "It's true. Tell me what happened." And she did. Sarah Morrison, born Sarah Kensington, had married Evan 5 years ago. She'd grown up in Portland, the only child of successful parents. Her father was a surgeon. Her mother was a real estate developer. When Sarah was 22, her maternal grandmother passed away and left her $800,000 in a trust. "It wasn't Bill Gates' money," Sarah said, wiping her eyes, "but it was enough. Enough to buy a house someday. Enough to start a business. Enough to feel secure." "What happened to it?" I asked, though I already knew. "I met Evan at a charity gala. He was charming, funny. He came from this perfect family with this perfect mother who made me feel so welcome." She laughed bitterly. "Too welcome." 3 months before their wedding, Delphine had invited Sarah to lunch. She said she wanted to get to know me better. Mother-daughter time. Sarah's voice was flat now, telling the story like it had happened to someone else. "We went to this fancy restaurant. She asked about my job, my family, my plans for the future. And then casually she asked if I had any family resources that might help Evan and me get started. What did you say?" I told her about the trust. I was proud of it. I thought," she trailed off, "I thought she'd be happy, that she'd see me as someone who could contribute to the family." But Delphine hadn't been happy. She'd been calculating. A week later, she invited me to meet with Marcus Webb. She said every couple in the family did financial planning before marriage, that it was tradition, smart. Sarah had gone to that meeting. She'd signed papers she didn't fully understand. Papers that transferred her grandmother's $800,000 into something called Morrison Family Investment Partnership. Delphine said it was safer that way, better returns, professional management. Sarah looked at me with hollow eyes. "Do you know how much of that money I can access now?" "How much?" "None. Zero. It's all tied up in family investments that I can't touch without approval from the board. The board, Delphine, Harold, and Marcus, they're the only ones with authority to approve withdrawals. And every time I ask, every time I suggest I might want to use some of my own money, they tell me it's not a good time. The market's bad. The investments need to mature, maybe next year. For 5 years. For 5 years. I felt rage building in my chest. Have you talked to a lawyer? I tried last year, but when Delphine found out, Sarah's voice broke. She told Evan I was being ungrateful, selfish, that I was disrespecting the family, and Evan, she sobbed. Evan took her side. He said I was being dramatic, that his mother only wanted to help us. Where's your money now? I don't know. Marcus sends quarterly statements, but they're so complicated I can't understand them. And when I asked for clarification, he says I'm not sophisticated enough to understand the investment strategies. Not sophisticated enough. Translation, too stupid to question us. Sarah, I said carefully, do you want your money back? She looked at me like I'd asked if she wanted to fly to the moon. It's gone, Mrs. Green. I'll never see it again. Not if you have the right lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. All my money is, I know a lawyer who might help pro bono, especially if we can prove Delphine has done this to multiple women. Sarah's eyes widened. Multiple? I think you and Leora aren't the only ones. I think this is a pattern, a business model. Sarah stood up abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. I can't. If I go after Delphine, Evan will divorce me. And without money, without family support, she looked around my modest living room. I'll have nothing. I have nowhere to go. You have somewhere to go. You can stay here. I barely know you. But you came here tonight. Why? She was quiet for a long time, then softly. Because when you stood up to Delphine today, I remembered what it felt like to have someone defend me. To have someone see the truth. She met my eyes. Please don't let her do to Leora what she did to me. I'm trying, but Leora won't listen. She will, Sarah said, once she sees the paperwork, once she realizes what they're actually asking her to sign. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. This has everything. All the documents I signed, bank statements, emails between Delphine and Marcus, everything. I took the flash drive like it was made of gold. Sarah, it's not enough to save me, but maybe it's enough to save her. Sarah left around 1 a.m., making me promise not to tell anyone she'd been there. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop going through every file on that flash drive. What I found made me physically ill. Emails between Delphine and Marcus dating back 8 years, discussing acquisition targets, strategizing about asset integration, celebrating when a daughter-in-law came in with a high-value portfolio, bank statements showing Sarah's $800,000 being systematically moved through a series of accounts, each transfer taking a percentage in management fees, administrative costs, advisory charges. After 5 years, Sarah's inheritance had been whittled down to approximately $340,000. The rest, $460,000, had been absorbed by the Morrison family investment accounts. It wasn't theft in the legal sense. Sarah had signed papers. She'd given permission. But it was exploitation, deliberate, calculated exploitation of a young woman's trust. And there was more. Another folder labeled B&M Hartley, Brandon and Michelle, the couple from yesterday's presentation. I opened it and found similar documents. Michelle had inherited $1.2 million from her grandfather. Within 3 years of marrying Brandon and joining the Morrison family financial framework, her inheritance had been reduced to $599,000. The rest was invested in Morrison family ventures. Delphine wasn't just doing this to Leora. She'd been doing it for years, to every daughter-in-law and son-in-law who married into the family with assets. It was a pattern, a system, a machine that consumed vulnerable people's inheritances and called it family. I was about to close my laptop when I saw one more folder. V. Ashford, Consultation notes. My blood went cold. I clicked it open. It was an email chain between Delphine and Victoria Ashford, the woman who tried to steal my estate 15 years ago. The first email was dated 2014. Victoria, thank you for lunch today. Your insights on estate planning were invaluable. I'd love to discuss how we might collaborate on family asset integration strategies. I think there's real potential for a partnership here. Bestie. Victoria's response. Delphine, I'm intrigued. Let's meet next week and discuss specifics. I have several case studies I can share regarding post-marital wealth consolidation. V. They'd worked together, learned from each other, perfected their methods, and now Delphine was coming for Leora with 15 years of experience. I forwarded everything to Marian Ellis with a subject line, urgent, evidence of financial exploitation. Then I called Leora. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, baby, please call me. I have information you need to see before you sign anything. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Grandma, I love you, but you were out of line yesterday. Julian and I need space. I'll call you in a few days. A few days. In a few days, it might be too late. At 10 a.m., my doorbell rang again. This time, when I opened it, I found Delphine Harold and Marcus Webb standing on my porch. Delphine's smile was gone. In its place was something cold and hard. Marlo, she said, her voice clipped. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. That's unfortunate because Leora is very upset. You've damaged her trust in her new family. And frankly, we're concerned about your influence. My influence? You're filling her head with paranoid conspiracy theories, Harold said, speaking for the first time, making her doubt people who only want to help her. Help her? I laughed. Is that what you call stealing daughters-in-law's inheritances help? Marcus stepped forward, his professional mask firmly in place. Mrs. Green, I understand you have concerns about the documents we presented. Perhaps if we sat down and I walked you through them line by line. I've read them line by line. I know exactly what they are. Delphine's eyes narrowed. What did Sarah tell you? So she knew Sarah had been here. She told me the truth about her inheritance, about your family financial framework, about how you've stolen over $400,000 from her. Stolen? Delphine's laugh was sharp. Everything we've done has been legal and documented. Sarah signed papers. She gave consent. Coerced consent isn't consent. Coerced. Delphine took a step closer. I helped that girl. She was going to blow that money on a business that would have failed in 6 months. We protected her from herself. You stole from her. We invested for her, Harold corrected. There's a difference. Then give her access to her own money. Let her withdraw it today. Silence. That's what I thought, I said. Delphine's composure finally cracked. Her voice turned vicious. You know what your problem is, Marlo? You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her granddaughter happy. You raised Leora in poverty, and now that she's marrying into a real family, you can't handle it. If your family is so real, why do you need her money? We don't need her money, Delphine shouted, then quieter, more controlled. We're offering to help her manage whatever small resources she has, that's all. Small resources, I repeated. So you do think she has money? I think, Delphine said carefully, that you've been very secretive about your finances, which suggests there's something to hide. Or it suggests I learned what happens when people like you find out what women like me have. Marcus cleared his throat. Ladies, perhaps we're getting off track. Mrs. Green, the reason we're here is to offer a compromise. If you're concerned about the financial planning documents, we can modify them, add safeguards, make you a co-trustee, even if that would make you more comfortable. It was a trap. They wanted to pull me into their framework, make me complicit. No, I said firmly. Leora doesn't need your financial planning. She doesn't need your guidance. And she certainly doesn't need to disclose her assets to you. So there are assets, Delphine said triumphantly. I knew it. I'd walked right into that. Leora is a Morrison now. Harold said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. She's part of our family. That means we have a right to know what she's bringing into this marriage. You have no rights, I said. None. We'll see about that. Delphine turned to leave, then paused. By the way, Leora and Julian are meeting with Marcus tomorrow afternoon, privately, to finalize their financial planning. If you try to interfere, we'll file for a restraining order against you. On what grounds? Harassment, stalking, attempting to manipulate a mentally vulnerable young woman. Leora isn't mentally vulnerable. She's been acting erratic ever since your little outburst yesterday, crying, confused, questioning her husband. Delphine smiled coldly. A judge would definitely see that as evidence of undue influence. They were going to isolate Leora from me completely. You can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. Watch us. Delphine walked down my porch steps. Come on, Harold. Marcus, we're done here. I stood in my doorway and watched them drive away, my heart pounding. I had less than 24 hours to save my granddaughter, and I had no idea how. At 2 p.m., I sat in Marion Ellis's office with Sarah Morrison and my laptop full of evidence. Marion read through everything in silence, her expression growing darker with every page. Finally, she looked up. This is worse than I thought. Can we stop them? I asked. Legally, it's complicated. Sarah signed documents. Michelle Hartley signed documents. If Leora signs too, she trailed off. But this coercion clause in your trust is our silver bullet. If we can prove Delphine pressured Leora into signing, everything she signed becomes void, and she loses all future claims. How do we prove pressure? Marion looked at Sarah. Would you testify? Sarah's face went white. Testify, like in court. Maybe not court, but in a deposition. On record. I don't know. Evan can't stop you from telling the truth, Marion said gently. And if we build a strong enough case, we might be able to get your money back too. All of it. I can't promise that, but we can try. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. If I do this, I lose everything. My marriage, my home, the family I thought I had. You already lost those things, I said softly. You just haven't admitted it yet. She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. Okay, I'll do it. For Leora, so she doesn't end up like me. Marion pulled out a legal pad. Good. Now tell me everything. Every conversation you had with Delphine about money, every document Marcus asked you to sign, every time they made you feel like you didn't have a choice. And Sarah talked. For 2 hours straight, she told her story. When she was done, Marion sat back. This is enough. This is definitely enough. Enough for what? I asked. To stop the meeting tomorrow, to show Leora what she's really walking into. Marion started typing on her computer. I'm drafting a letter right now, a formal legal notice to the Morrisons that any attempt to obtain Leora's financial information or pressure her into signing management agreements will be considered coercion under the terms of her trust. Will they listen? They will when they see we have evidence of a pattern, when they realize we can prove they've done this before. What if Leora doesn't believe us? Marion stopped typing and looked at me. Then we'll have to let her make her own mistakes. But at least we'll have tried. That night at 9:47 p.m., Leora finally called. Grandma, baby, thank God, are you okay? She paused. I don't know. I'm confused, angry, scared. Where are you? At the hotel. Julian's in the shower. I only have a few minutes. Listen to me. No, you listen to me first. Her voice was shaking. Today I asked Julian about Sarah's inheritance, the money from her grandmother. I asked him how much she can access on her own. My heart started pounding. What did he say? He said she doesn't need to access it, that his parents manage it better than she ever could, that she's not good with money. Leora's voice broke. Grandma, what if you're right? What if they're trying to do the same thing to me? They are baby, and I have proof. What kind of proof? Documents, emails, bank statements, evidence that Delphine has done this to at least two other daughters-in-law, Sarah and Michelle Hartley. Michelle, too. Leora sounded shocked, but she seemed so happy at the meeting. People seem happy when they're performing a script they've been given. There was a long silence. What do I do? Don't go to that meeting tomorrow. Don't sign anything. And if you can come to my house, bring Julian if you want, but come see the evidence before you make any decisions. Julian won't come. He says you're trying to break us up. I'm trying to save you. I heard a door open in the background. Julian's voice. Babe, who are you talking to? Leora's voice, distant from the phone. Just my grandma. 1 second. Then closer. Grandma, I have to go. Leora, wait. I'll think about what you said. I promise. Baby, please. But she'd already hung up. I sat in my living room in the dark, staring at my phone, and prayed that thinking would be enough. I woke up at 5 a.m. after 3 hours of fitful sleep. My phone showed no new messages from Leora. The meeting with Marcus Webb was scheduled for 2 p.m. I had 9 hours. I made coffee with shaking hands and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the flash drive Sarah had given me. All that evidence, all those stolen dreams. And if I didn't do something, Leora would be next. At 6:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Mrs. Green, this is Michelle Hartley. We met at the Morrison house. I sat up straight. Michelle, yes, I remember. I'm sorry to call so early. I got your number from Sarah. Her voice was quiet, strained. She told me what you're trying to do for Leora. Did she tell you why? A long pause. She told me about her inheritance, about how much she's lost. Another pause. Mrs. Green, I need to tell you something about mine. Michelle Hartley. Born Michelle Zhang met me at a coffee shop in Fremont at 7 a.m. She looked different than she had at the Morrison house, smaller somehow, like the performance had taken everything out of her and left her hollow. I have an hour before I have to be at work, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Brandon thinks I'm at the gym. Tell me what happened. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup but didn't drink. My grandfather came to America from Taiwan in 1960 with nothing. He built a restaurant business, small places, nothing fancy but successful. When he died, he left me $1.2 million. When was this? 4 years ago, 6 months before I married Brandon. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I was so proud. I wanted to use it to start my own restaurant. My grandfather's legacy, you know, but when I told Brandon's family, I already knew where this was going. Delphine said restaurants fail 90% of the time, that I'd be throwing away my grandfather's hard work, that she knew better investment strategies. Michelle's voice cracked. She made me feel stupid for wanting to follow my dream. What did she tell you to do? Put it in the family investment fund. Let it grow, she said. Wait a few years until you have even more capital. Then start your restaurant with a real foundation. Michelle laughed bitterly. Do you know how much is left? How much? $590,000. In 4 years, I've lost over $600,000 to management fees and investment losses. But somehow, the Morrison family wealth keeps growing. I felt sick. Have you tried to get it back? I hired a lawyer last year quietly. He looked at the documents I signed and said, she stopped composing herself. He said I gave them legal authority to manage it. That unless I could prove fraud or coercion, there was nothing I could do. What about Brandon? Does he know how you feel? Brandon. Michelle's laugh was sharp. Brandon does whatever his mother tells him. He thinks I'm being ungrateful, irrational. She leaned forward. Mrs. Green, I'm trapped. I make $60,000 a year as a graphic designer. My grandfather's money is gone, and if I leave Brandon, I leave with nothing. You could testify, I said. Help us build a case against Delphine. I can't. I signed an NDA. You what? 2 years ago, when I first started asking questions about where my money was going, Marcus Webb had me sign a family privacy agreement. I thought it was normal, but it was really a non-disclosure agreement. If I talk about the family's financial arrangements, they can sue me for breach of contract. This was worse than I'd thought. Delphine wasn't just stealing, she was making sure her victims couldn't speak. Michelle, NDAs don't protect illegal activity. If we can prove, I don't care. She stood up abruptly. I can't do this. I can't risk what little I have left. She pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the table. These are copies of my documents. Everything I signed. Maybe they'll help you save Leora, but please don't tell anyone where you got them. Michelle, I'm sorry. I have to go. She walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with yet another envelope full of evidence and the crushing weight of how many women Delphine had destroyed. At 10 a.m., I met with Marion Ellis at her office. She wasn't alone. Marlo, this is David Park, Marion said, gesturing to a man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses. He's a private investigator who specializes in financial fraud. I shook his hand. Marion called you. She did. And after looking at the evidence you've gathered, I did some digging of my own. He opened a laptop and turned it toward me. What I found is disturbing. On the screen was a spreadsheet with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Over the last 12 years, David said, I've identified 6 women who married into the Morrison family or Morrison family friends. All 6 had significant inheritances or trust funds, and all 6 saw their assets absorbed into Morrison family investment accounts. 6, not 3. 6 Sarah Morrison, Michelle Hartley, and these 4 others. He pointed to names I didn't recognize. The total amount involved is approximately $4.8 million. I felt dizzy. Where did it all go? That's where it gets interesting. David clicked to another screen. Delphine Morrison doesn't have direct access to any of these funds. Everything flows through Morrison Family Wealth Management, which is managed by Marcus Webb. But here's the thing, Marcus Webb's firm receives a 12% annual management fee. That's astronomical. Most wealth managers charge 1–2%. So Marcus is taking the money. Some of it, but look at this. He pulled up another document. Morrison Family Wealth Management has a parent company called Heritage Capital Group, and Heritage Capital Group has 3 board members, Marcus Webb, Harold Morrison, and Delphine Morrison. So she does have access, not direct access, but board members vote on distributions, investment strategies, and fee structures. And according to Heritage Capital's bylaws, board members receive annual compensation equal to 5% of assets under management. I did the math in my head. 5% of $4.8 million was $240,000 per year. Delphine was making nearly $250,000 annually by stealing from daughters-in-law. This isn't just family control, I said slowly. This is a business. Exactly, Marion confirmed. And now they're coming for Leora because they think she has assets worth acquiring. She does, I admitted. Her trust is worth $200 million. David whistled. That would be their biggest score by far, which means they won't give up easily, Marion added. Marlo, we need to stop that meeting this afternoon. If Leora signs anything, even with the coercion clause untangling, it will take years. I've been calling her all morning. She won't answer. Then we go there, to the meeting, and we show her everything. At 1:45 p.m., Marion and I arrived at Marcus Webb's office building in downtown Seattle. Sarah had texted me the address and suite number. She was supposed to be there too, but she'd backed out at the last minute, too scared of what Evan would do. I didn't blame her, but I also knew we might need her testimony. How do we do this? I asked Marion as we rode the elevator to the 15th floor. Carefully. We can't force our way in, but we can request to observe any signing of documents. As Leora's grandmother and as her trust's originating attorney, we have standing. What if they refuse? Then we make a scene loud enough that Leora hears it. The elevator dinged. We stepped out into a hallway with expensive carpet and soft lighting. Suite 1520, Morrison Family Wealth Management. Marion knocked. A receptionist opened the door, young, polished, clearly paid well to maintain appearances. Can I help you? We're here to see Leora Morrison, Marion said. My name is Marion Ellis. I'm her attorney. The receptionist's smile faltered. I'm sorry, but Mrs. Morrison is in a private consultation right now. Then we'll wait. That's really not, we'll wait. Marion repeated, her voice steel. We pushed past the receptionist into a small waiting room. Through a glass door I could see into a conference room. And there was Leora. She sat at a large table, Julian beside her. Across from them were Delphine Harold and Marcus Webb. Papers were spread across the table. Leora looked overwhelmed, small, my hands clenched into fists. The receptionist was on the phone now, whispering urgently. Within seconds, the conference room door opened. Delphine stepped out, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Marlowe, Ms. Ellis." Her voice was ice. "You're not welcome here." "We're not leaving," I said. "Then I'll call security." "Go ahead," Marion said calmly. "And while security is on their way, I'll explain to everyone in this office, including your receptionist and any other clients who happen to walk in, exactly what kind of wealth management you practice here." Delphine's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." Marion pulled out her phone. "I have documented evidence of financial exploitation involving 6 women over 12 years. I have bank statements, email chains, testimony. If you call security, I'll make sure every word of it ends up with the Washington State Bar Association and the Seattle Times." The color drained from Delphine's face. "Now," Marion continued, "you can let us speak with Leora, or you can explain to all your other clients why their wealth manager is about to be investigated for fraud." For a long moment no one moved. Then Delphine turned sharply. 5 minutes. Conference room. "But if you try anything—" "We're just here to show Leora some documents," Marion said. "That's all." Delphine led us into the conference room. Leora looked up, her eyes widening when she saw me. "Grandma!" "What are you doing here?" Julian stood up. "This is completely inappropriate." "Sit down, Julian," Marion said with such authority that he actually did. I crossed to Leora and took her hand. "Baby, before you sign anything, I need you to see something." "Marlowe, we've been through this," Harold started. "No, we haven't," I said, not taking my eyes off Leora. "You've given her a sales pitch. Now let me show her the truth." "The truth?" Delphine scoffed. "The truth is that you're a paranoid old woman who—" "The truth," Marion interrupted, opening her briefcase and pulling out a thick folder, "is that Mrs. Morrison has systematically exploited at least 6 daughters-in-law over the last 12 years, extracting approximately $4.8 million in assets through coercive financial planning arrangements." She spread documents across the table. Bank statements, email chains, the spreadsheet David had created. Leora stared at them. "What is this?" "This," I said, pointing to Sarah's documents, "is what happened to your sister-in-law, Sarah. She had $800,000 from her grandmother. After 5 years in your family's wealth management system, she has access to $0. "That's not—" Julian started. "This," Marion continued, pointing to Michelle's documents, "is what happened to Michelle Hartley. She had $1.2 million from her grandfather. After 4 years, she's lost over $600,000 to management fees." "These women signed papers," Marcus Webb said, his voice tight. "They gave consent." "Coerced consent isn't consent," Marion shot back. "And we can prove coercion. We have testimony. We have patterns. We have evidence that you specifically target vulnerable young women right after marriage when they're most eager to please their new families." Leora was reading the documents now, her hands shaking. She looked up at Julian. "Did you know about Sarah's money?" Julian's face went red. "My mother manages the family finances. I don't—" "Did you know?" Leora's voice was louder now, sharper. I knew Mom helped her invest it. I didn't know." "You didn't know, or you didn't want to know." Julian looked at his mother. Even now, even with the evidence spread across the table, he looked to Delphine for guidance. And that's when I saw it. The moment Leora's face changed. The moment she realized her husband would never choose her over his mother. "What were you going to have me sign?" Leora asked quietly. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mrs. Morrison, these documents are simply, what were you going to have me sign?" Marion picked up the papers from in front of Marcus. A marital asset disclosure form requiring you to list all assets, including trusts and inheritances. A family wealth management agreement giving Morrison Family Wealth Management, which is controlled by Delphine and Harold Advisory Authority, over any assets exceeding $25,000. And a beneficiary designation form naming the Morrison Family Trust as a co-beneficiary of your personal trust. Co-beneficiary. Leora's voice was barely a whisper. What does that mean? It means I said that if anything happened to you, they'd have legal claim to your inheritance. Leora looked at Delphine. You were trying to steal from me. Steal? Delphine's laugh was brittle. Sweetheart, we were trying to help you. Clearly, you don't understand the complexity of wealth management. I understand that Sarah can't access her own money. I understand that Michelle lost her grandfather's legacy. And I understand that you've been asking about my finances since the day we met. Because families should be transparent, Delphine's voice rose. Because marriage means trust. No, Leora said, standing up. Marriage means respect. And you don't respect me. You don't even see me as a person. You see me as a... She looked at the spreadsheet of names and dollar amounts. You see me as a number. Leora, don't be dramatic, Harold said. Dramatic. Leora turned to him. You've stolen millions of dollars from women in your family, and I'm being dramatic. We haven't stolen anything. Delphine slammed her hand on the table. Every woman who joined this family signed papers voluntarily. If they regret it now, that's not our fault. But you pressured them, Marion said calmly. You manipulated them. You used their desire to please their new families against them. That's coercion, Mrs. Morrison, and coercion voids contracts. Marcus Webb stood up suddenly. I think this meeting is over. I think you're right, Leora said. She picked up the unsigned documents and handed them to Marcus. I won't be signing these. Not today, not ever. Leora, please, Julian said, reaching for her hand. Let's just talk about this at home. She pulled her hand away. At home. At the apartment your mother bought for us, where your mother has a key, where your mother decides what furniture we buy and what car I should drive. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Leora's voice broke. I married you. Not your mother. Not your family. You. But you're not even here, Julian. You're just her puppet. Julian's face crumpled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then he looked at Delphine again, always again, and I knew Leora was right. He would never choose her. Come on, baby, I said gently, putting my arm around Leora. Let's go home. This isn't over, Delphine said, her voice shaking with rage. Leora is still legally a Morrison. She's still part of this family, and we have rights. You have no rights, Marion said. Not to her money, not to her trust, not to anything. In fact, she pulled out another document and slid it across the table. This is a cease and desist letter. If you contact Leora about financial matters, if you pressure her about disclosing assets, if you attempt in any way to influence her financial decisions, you will trigger the coercion clause in her trust. Coercion clause, Delphine snatched up the letter. It states that any attempt to manipulate or pressure the beneficiary results in automatic and permanent forfeiture of all potential claims by in-laws, forever. Even if Leora wanted to give you access to her trust later, she couldn't. The trust would prohibit it. I watched Delphine's face as she read. Watched the moment she realized she'd lost. You did this, she said, looking at me with pure hatred. You poisoned her against us. No, I said quietly. You did this yourself, the moment you decided other people's money was yours to take. Leora moved back into my house that night. Julian called 17 times. She didn't answer. Delphine sent flowers, letters, texts, all of them, variations of we only wanted to help, and we love you like a daughter. Leora deleted them all. On day 3, Julian showed up at my door. I let him in because Leora asked me to. They talked in my living room for 2 hours. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. I didn't know it was that bad, Julian kept saying. I didn't know. But you didn't want to know, Leora replied. You never asked questions. You never stood up for Sarah or Michelle or me. I'm sorry. I'll change. You'll what, Julian? Stand up to your mother. Tell her no. You're 32 years old and you've never made a decision without her approval. That's not true. What car do you drive? Silence. What company do you work for? Silence. Where do we live? Leora, please. Every decision in your life has been made by Delphine, including marrying me. I see that now. When Julian left that night, his eyes were red and his shoulders were slumped. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt sad. Sad for Leora. Sad for Julian. Sad for all the ways Delphine had broken her own family. On day 5, Sarah called me. Mrs. Green, I heard what happened at the meeting. How did you hear? Delphine called Evan, screaming about how you and Leora humiliated her, how you turned Leora against the family. Sarah paused. Is it true? Did you really have evidence? Yes. About me? About my money? Yes. And you showed it to Leora? I did. There was a long silence. Then quietly, could you show it to a judge? My heart started pounding. Sarah, what are you saying? I'm saying I want my money back. I want out. And I want to make sure Delphine can never do this to anyone else. You'd be willing to testify. I talked to a lawyer, a different lawyer, not Marcus. She said if I can prove coercion and pattern of behavior, I might have a case. Her voice shook. Mrs. Green, I'm terrified, but I'm also tired. Tired of being scared. Tired of having no control. Tired of watching Evan choose his mother over me every single day. What about Evan? What will you do? I'm leaving him. I packed a bag this morning. I'm going to stay with my parents in Portland until the divorce is finalized. Does he know? Not yet. I'm going to tell him tonight. Sarah, be careful. If Delphine thinks you're going to expose her, she can't hurt me anymore, not legally. You said the NDAs don't protect illegal activity, and what she did was illegal, wasn't it? Marion thinks so, and so does the private investigator we hired. Then I'm doing it, for me, for Michelle, for the women who came before us, and for whoever might come after. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and cried. Not sad tears, proud tears, because Sarah had found something I'd been afraid she'd lost forever. Her courage. On day 6, someone knocked on my door at 9 p.m. I looked through the peephole and saw the last person I expected, Harold Morrison. I opened the door, but kept the chain lock on. What do you want? He looked terrible, older than I'd ever seen him. May I come in? Please, just for a few minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood in my entryway, looking around at my modest home, like he was seeing it for the first time. I owe you an apology. An apology for everything. For how we treated you. For what we tried to do to Leora. For... He stopped, his voice breaking. For what we've been doing for years. I gestured to the couch. Sit down. He sat, his hands clasped between his knees. I didn't know. Not all of it. I knew Delphine was involved in the family finances. I knew she helped manage things, but I didn't know about the fees, about how much she was taking, about the coercion. How did you find out? Sarah left Evan 2 days ago. She sent a letter explaining everything, why she was leaving, what we'd done to her. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. We destroyed that girl. We took everything from her and made her feel grateful for it. Yes, I said simply. You did. When I confronted Delphine about it, she said it was for the family, that we were building wealth, that those women didn't know how to manage money properly. He shook his head. But the truth is, Mrs. Green, I don't think it was ever about the family. I think it was about Delphine feeling powerful, feeling important. What are you going to do? He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm giving this to your lawyer. He handed it to me. It's a full accounting of every dollar Delphine has taken from daughters-in-law over the last 12 years. Bank statements, investment records, everything. I opened the envelope, page after page of financial documents, evidence. Why are you doing this? Because I have grandchildren. Because Evan has a daughter who's 10 years old, and I don't want her growing up thinking this is normal, that this is how families treat each other. His voice broke completely. I don't want her to become another Sarah. Harold, if you give us this Delphine, I know what she'll do. She'll fight me in court. She'll try to destroy my reputation. She'll turn our sons against me. He stood up. But I'm 67 years old, Mrs. Green, and I'm tired of being afraid of my own wife. After he left, I called Marion immediately. You're not going to believe what I just got. The law offices of Ellis and Associates were neutral ground for what Marion was calling a resolution meeting. Present, Delphine Morrison with her lawyer, Harold Morrison with his lawyer, Marcus Webb with his lawyer, Sarah Morrison with her lawyer, Michelle Hartley with her lawyer, Leora with Marion, and me. Delphine looked like she'd aged 10 years. Her perfect hair was slightly disheveled. Her clothes were still expensive, but wrinkled. Her eyes were hard and cold. Let's be clear, her lawyer started. My client denies all allegations of fraud, coercion, or financial misconduct. These were legitimate wealth management arrangements. Save it, Marion interrupted. We're not here to debate. We're here to offer a settlement. A settlement, Delphine's lawyer scoffed. You haven't even filed charges. Not yet, but we will. We have testimony from 3 victims. We have evidence from Harold Morrison himself showing systematic exploitation. We have bank records, email chains, and a pattern of behavior spanning 12 years. Marion opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. And we have this, a complaint, ready to file with the Washington State Bar Association, the Attorney General's Office, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Marcus Webb's face went white. So here's the settlement, Marion continued. All funds taken from Sarah Morrison, Michelle Hartley, and 4 other identified victims will be returned in full with interest. Based on our calculations, that's approximately $2.3 million. That's ridiculous, Delphine started. 2. Marion continued. Marcus Webb will surrender his license to practice wealth management and will sign a consent decree prohibiting him from working in financial services. You can't. 3. Delphine Morrison will sign an affidavit admitting to coercive financial practices and will agree to permanent monitoring of all her financial activities. Absolutely not. Delphine stood up. I won't sign anything that 4. Marion said, her voice rising. Heritage Capital Group will be dissolved and all board members will be removed from any fiduciary positions. The room erupted, lawyers shouting, Delphine screaming, Marcus pale and silent. But then Harold stood up. I accept the terms. Everyone stopped. Delphine turned to her husband, her face twisted with betrayal. What? I said, I accept the terms. As majority shareholder of Heritage Capital Group and as your husband, I have the authority to dissolve the company and distribute assets. And that's what I'm going to do. Harold, you can't. I can, and I will. He looked at Sarah. I'm sorry for everything we put you through. Sarah started crying. He looked at Michelle. You deserve better than what we gave you. Michelle nodded, unable to speak. He looked at Leora. I'm glad you got away before we could hurt you too. Then he sat down and signed the settlement agreement. Delphine stared at him like she'd never seen him before. You're destroying our family. No, Harold said quietly. You did that. I'm just trying to repair some of the damage. One by one, the lawyers negotiated the final details. By the end of the meeting, Sarah and Michelle had agreements to get their money back. Not all of it immediately, but over time, with interest. Marcus Webb signed away his license without a word. And Delphine signed the affidavit with shaking hands, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. As we were leaving, she stopped me in the hallway. This is your fault, she hissed. You turned everyone against me. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself, the moment you decided other people's assets were yours to control. That girl had no idea what to do with $200 million, so she did know. She'd known all along. She still doesn't, Delphine continued. And when she makes mistakes, when she loses it all, you'll wish you'd let us help her. I'd rather Leora make her own mistakes, I said, than let you make them for her. I walked away and didn't look back. Leora filed for divorce from Julian 3 months after the confrontation. It was surprisingly amicable. Julian didn't fight it. I think part of him was relieved. He moved back in with his father. Harold had gotten a small apartment in Capitol Hill far from the Laurelhurst mansion where Delphine still lived alone. Evan still sided with his mother. Some people never learn. But Julian started therapy. Real therapy, not just the kind where you complain about your problems but never change. He got a new job at a different company, started making his own decisions. He called Leora once about 4 months after the divorce papers were filed. I just wanted to say thank you, he'd said, for showing me who I was, or who I wasn't. You're welcome, Leora had replied. I hope you find yourself. Sarah got her money back, $685,000 of the original $800,000. Not everything, but enough to start over. She moved back to Portland, opened a small bakery, and started dating a high school teacher who made her laugh. Michelle got $920,000 back. She opened her grandfather's restaurant. Named it Zhang's after him. Last I heard, there's a 3-week wait for a table. The 4 other women also got settlements, though I never met them. They disappeared back into their lives, glad to have some of their dignity and their money returned. Delphine lost everything. Her social standing, her reputation, her family. The society pages that used to photograph her at charity galas now whispered about her at grocery stores. She tried to rebuild, started calling herself a life coach on Instagram. But people knew. They always know. As for Leora, 6 months after everything fell apart, Leora and I sat on my back porch drinking coffee and watching the rain. Grandma, she said quietly, I need to ask you something. Anything, baby. Why did you never tell me about the money all those years? I set my coffee cup down and thought about my answer, because I wanted you to build a life that was yours, not shaped by money, not controlled by people who wanted your money, just yours. Do you regret it not telling me sooner? No, because if I told you at 18 or 21 or even 23, you wouldn't have believed me about Delphine. You would have thought I was paranoid, overprotective. I looked at her. Sometimes people need to see the trap before they understand why it's dangerous. I saw it, Leora said softly. God, did I see it. What will you do now with the trust? She was quiet for a long time. I've been thinking about that, about what Grandpa wanted when he leased those mineral rights, about what you wanted when you set up the trust. What did we want? Protection, security, freedom. She turned to me. I don't need $200 million, Grandma. No one needs $200 million. But you know what I do need? What? To make sure no one else ends up like Sarah, or Michelle, or me, almost. My heart swelled. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I want to create a foundation for women escaping financial abuse, for daughters-in-law trapped in controlling families, for anyone who needs legal help fighting predatory estate planning. She smiled. I want to be what Marion Ellis was for you, what you were for me. I reached over and took her hand. Your great-grandfather would be proud. Yeah. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain, both of us thinking about the future. Then Leora laughed suddenly. What? I asked. I just realized something. Delphine spent 12 years stealing from women to make $240,000 a year. And I have $200 million that I can use to fight people like her. She thought she was so smart targeting me, but she accidentally went after someone who could actually stop her. That's called karma, baby. No, Leora said, squeezing my hand. That's called having a grandmother who knew when to be quiet and when to speak up. The Green Family Foundation officially launched 18 months after Leora's divorce was finalized. Its mission: protecting women's financial autonomy and providing legal support for victims of familial financial abuse. In its first year, the foundation helped 23 women escape controlling family situations and recover over $8 million in stolen assets. Sarah Morrison became the foundation's first employee director of victim services. She understood what it felt like to be trapped better than anyone. Michelle Hartley joined the board. So did Marion Ellis. Harold Morrison donated $500,000 and spent his retirement volunteering at the foundation's legal clinic. Evan Morrison still didn't speak to his father. Some relationships can't be repaired. Julian Morrison never remarried. He sent Leora a card every year on what would have been their anniversary. It always said the same thing: "Thank you for saving me." Delphine Morrison moved to Arizona. Last I heard, she was trying to start another estate planning business. Some people never change. But most importantly, Leora bloomed. She went back to school, got a degree in social work, and started working directly with abuse survivors. She met someone new, a teacher named Marcus. No relation to Marcus Webb, who thought her story was incredible and her mission was inspiring. They got married in my backyard with just 20 people present, no fancy venue, no designer dress, no mother-in-law drama, just love and trust and freedom. Last week, Leora asked me to speak at a foundation fundraiser. "What should I talk about?" I asked her. "Tell them what you learned about protecting what matters." So I did. I stood in front of 200 people and told them about Victoria Ashford, about Delphine Morrison, about the day I warned my granddaughter never to tell her mother-in-law about $200 million. And I told them this: women are taught to be generous, to be accommodating, to keep the peace. And there's nothing wrong with those qualities. But there's a difference between being kind and being a target, between being helpful and being exploited. The hardest thing I ever did was tell my granddaughter to keep a secret from her husband's family. Not because secrets are good, but because some information in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. If you're a young woman about to marry into a family that asks too many questions about your finances, trust your instincts. If you're already married and your in-laws are pressuring you to organize your assets, get a lawyer. And if you're a mother or grandmother watching someone you love walk into a trap, speak up, even if it's uncomfortable, even if they don't want to hear it. Because silence protects predators, and speaking up saves lives. The applause was deafening, but the moment that mattered most came after when a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "My fiancé's mother has been asking about my trust fund," she whispered. "She wants me to meet with her financial advisor after the wedding." I thought I was being paranoid for feeling uncomfortable. I took her hand. "You're not paranoid, and you're not alone. Come to our office Monday morning. We'll help you." She left with Leora's card and hope in her eyes, and I realized this is the legacy my father started with 200 acres of scrubby land. Not just money, not just security, protection, empowerment, freedom, and the knowledge that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is teach someone when to stay silent and when to speak up.